Okay, in this video we're going to check out the speed differences with the new Raspberry Pi that's come out. The new model is called Raspberry Pi 2 Model B, and the previous ones are just Raspberry Pi A+, B, B+. They're all pretty much the same, the old set. The only difference between B and B+ is different amount of USB ports, and the sound and composite video comes out slightly differently, but basically they're all the same. You can tell which you've got by on the output script here. I've just logged in, user Pi, password Raspberry, and the RetroPie Image will produce this script when you log in, and you can see just here it says ARM v6, and that's the type of processor that's in the original Pi's, ARM processor that's based on version 6, so you can tell quite easily that way. If you haven't got this script to hand, you can tell with the command uname space -a, and if you hit enter there you get the output, and you can see towards the end here it says ARM v6, and so you can be pretty sure that you've got an original Pi. There's probably not a foolproof way of checking that, but it's I'm pretty sure it won't set you wrong, so just take a look at that and you can tell which one you're running. In addition, you can also see the kernel of the system that you're running. The kernel's kind of the core of the system, and that gets updated not very frequently. With the RetroPie Image, it uses Raspbian as the Linux operating system, and that's what the kernel's been updated on. So on this Pi, which is a B, an original Model B, I can tell it's original because of this ARM v6. I've also updated the kernel, and the version is shown here, 3.18.5, and that's also shown up here, 3.18.5, and that's the latest version as it stands. If you haven't updated this, well, it will be less, but I think I'm right in saying that for the image on your SD card to work on a Raspberry Pi 2 Model B, it must be at least 3.18, so if it's older, it probably won't work. But the good thing is, if you get an image that's working on the Raspberry Pi 2, it will work on the first set of Raspberry Pis. So you know, as soon as you've got something built or you're using it on the new model, it will work on the old ones. And it's easy to update the old one as well, if you want to keep the one you've got at the moment, but you know in the future you're going to move to a Raspberry Pi 2, then you can easily update the image and just copy it across, or use that same SD card when you put it into the Pi 2. If you've got a Model B original, it will be using an full-size SD card, and obviously the new Raspberry Pi will use micro SD, so you might want to get ahead of the game and put it in an adapter and get a micro SD ready, but that's not too important. Okay, so you might have read the difference between the new model and the old model is pretty small in what the actual differences are. It's basically exactly the same, pretty much exactly the same dimensions, layout, and everything else on the board, so visually they look very similar. Most of the cases that fit a B+ would happily fit a Pi 2 Model B as well. There's just some very minor differences, so typically it's basically the same there. But the differences are, on the new model you've got twice as much memory, so rather than ½ gig of RAM you've got 1 gig of RAM, so that's going to help some emulation in itself, you know, a bit more room to load games into the memory if it needs to, and perhaps more dedicated for the graphical memory side of things. Just generally it's going to be better if it's got twice as much. It should be able to take advantage of that. So yeah, the new ones have got 1 gig of RAM, and also the new Raspberry Pis, rather than having a single core processor on that on the chip, it's got a quad core, so there are 4 cores on that CPU that it could take advantage of if it wanted to. And the number that you'll see sort of dotted about on the internet is that the new Raspberry Pi 2 is 6 times faster on the CPU than the original one, and depending on how you measure it, it is 6 times faster, but that's quite often going to take advantage of, if not fully, then quite a lot of advantage by the fact it's quad core. It's going to measure it using 4 of those CPUs. But to take advantage of that, the software, whether you run emulators or anything, it has to be aware that there's more cores and take advantage of them. So you're not going to just start running games 6 times faster, and you're not going to get 6 times the performance straight off the bat or anything like that. So don't expect massive increase just like that. I think on the various interviews that the Raspberry Pi developers have done, they've said inherently, even if a piece of software can only take advantage of 1 core, you're still going to see an improvement, maybe something in the region of 150%. So that'd be like, well, 1.5 times, so 50% increase. So it's still a measurable difference without having to do an awful lot. Plus, some, and if we're talking about RetroPie, some of the emulators, including RetroArch, I think inherently might be able to take advantage of some of the cores, maybe outputting or managing the audio through one core and the graphics and everything else through another. So they might be able to take advantage to a degree, which obviously helps. But yeah, just don't take that 6 times speed for granted, and it's going to run off the bat. Separately, going forward, the emulators, not just RetroArch, but the other emulators on there like GNGO or FBA, they might get developed specifically for Raspberry Pi 2, taking more advantage of the multiple cores. So as we go on, I expect things to get better and better. But what I'm going to do in this video is show how it stands at the moment. So if you were going to get a new Raspberry Pi now and you're not sure if it's worth it, we can just do a couple of basic tests. Okay, so what I've got here is my current system, which is, like I said, a Model B original, and we can tell that by the V6 here. I'm going to run some SNES games and some N64 games. But before I do that, whilst we're in this terminal view, I've shown you how to see what kernel you're running. I'm going to show you how to update it if it is old. If it is previous to this, it's probably worth updating it. And then separately, we're going to another way of how you can get RetroPie up and running without having to update. Okay, so I'm just going to copy some text off the screen here, like this. Okay, so the command to update your Raspberry Pi is sudo to run the command as administrator here, then apt-get, which basically tells the Raspbian installation to go and update its database to see what's out of date, what's not. Now, given that the element that we're going to update here, the bit we care about, is probably already, the information for it is already in the database, you can probably get away without doing the update, but belt and braces, it just covers it. If you do this command, you shouldn't be able to go wrong. Space ampersand, which just means after we've done this, we're going to run this command. Again, sudo, run it as administrator, apt-get and upgrade. And upgrade does the actual changing of the files or the kernel and all the other relevant parts on the RetroPie system or your Raspbian build to get updated. If you run this, it'll take about, probably, depending on how long ago you last ran it, maybe 20 minutes-ish, give or take. So if you hit that, it'll prompt you a couple of times as it goes through. Are you sure it'll take this much space? Do you want to go ahead, etc.? Just hit yes, and it'll sort of finish up, complete it, and carry on, and then probably worth a reboot. But yeah, so run that command there: sudo apt-get space update space ampersand space sudo space apt-get space upgrade, and that should do it. Okay, so we imagine that everyone's done that, and mine certainly has, because I've got 3.18.5 showing just there. Okay, I'll put in the description as well a link to show you the release notes on the different kernels. Like I say, it doesn't happen an awful lot. There's probably, I'm guessing now, but I think maybe 10 updates in the last couple of years for Raspbian, so it's not often that you'd need to update the kernel. And as I said before, once you get it working on a Raspberry Pi 2, it will work on the first set of Raspberry Pis, so it is backwards compatible. Okay, now the other area that I'm going to look at is, because the chips are different here, the overclocking is going to be different, so you wouldn't necessarily want to use exactly the same image on an old Raspberry as a new Raspberry. So we'll take a quick look at the way that the overclocking works now. Okay, to get to the config for the overclocking and also the config for the resizing and general maintenance, you go sudo raspi-config. Like that. Okay, then you get the screen up, and you always want to expand your file system if it's a new card, but you may well have done that already, so you don't need to do that again. Then going down to overclock, and this is just a warning saying that, you know, it may reduce the life of the Raspberry Pi, but a lot of people constantly overclock. It shouldn't be a problem. And here are the options. So with this new build, they have got a new specific overclock for the Pi, all of these ones above are geared for the original models, so B, B+, AA+, those systems. But that one is specifically if you want to overclock your Pi. Now, just to qualify the speeds here, the stock original Raspberry Pi, the basic setup, they run at 700 megahertz. You can see that if you don't overclock, it runs at 700 megahertz. And the clock settings here have got options all the way up to 1000 megahertz. Now, I don't tend to run mine on turbo. I tend to go high on mine, so my tests and the games that I'll show will be running on high. Obviously, you could go turbo and maybe it'll make a bit more difference. You might want to consider a little mini heatsink if you go for turbo, depending on how hot your Raspberry Pi runs. But I think a lot of people go high. I mean, a lot of people even go medium. And it's worth remembering that on the Raspberry Pi, the vast majority of the old retro games, particularly the old 2D SNES Mega Drive and systems before that, run absolutely fine on that setting. Really, the main area that people will notice hold-ups are on the newer games, particularly newer MAME emulation, or with SNES games where they need the FX chip emulated as well, or with N64 or PS1, so the newer systems or the more demanding systems. But by all means, if you're thinking, do you need a Pi 2 to emulate old games? No, you don't. There are thousands upon thousands of games that work absolutely fine with a B+. Plenty of people have got a lot of satisfaction out of the fact that the original Pis can run these games perfectly well, and there's plenty of YouTube videos showing that. So don't think you have to get that. But the advantage with the new Raspberry Pi is if you haven't got one at all, it's exactly the same price as the old one. So there's not an awful lot of point for you buying an old one unless you need a specific model for a particular purpose. But if you're just starting out, I'd get a Pi 2 if you haven't got one at all. If you can buy one at the moment, they're starting to get a bit scarce, but I'm sure there'll be plenty pretty soon. They shouldn't be too difficult to get hold of. Okay, so yeah, these are the overclocking options, and on my B model, my original B model, I set it to high. And on the Pi 2, I set it to this overclocking method, the only one it's got here. Okay, so as I mentioned, the original set of Raspberry Pis are, the base speed is 700 megahertz, and the base speed of Raspberry Pi 2 is 900. So if you do no overclocking, you've already got an inherent bonus. But I'm going to set it to 1000 when I do mine and later on. I'm not going to go back into this terminal session for Raspberry Pi 2. When I do the game demos, just know that I've set it to this option here. And this is the one we're doing at the moment. And you can see where this is done, because if I cancel out that, hit finish there, and I go change directory, /boot, in this directory there is a file called config.txt, and that kind of acts like a BIOS on a computer. The Raspberry Pi will read it pretty much before it does anything else to work out some basics. So if I edit that with the command sudo nano, okay, there we go, sudo nano config text. Here are all the settings in that file, and the ones that we're particularly interested in are where the overclocking settings were, which are right down the bottom here. And you can see I've set it to 950 megahertz. Well, I didn't edit this file, I just let that screen earlier do it, but this is where it appears. So you can read this file if you're not sure it's happened. And similarly, it'll be a little bit different on the Pi 2, where it says this is clocked to 1000 from 900, and the other settings there are being updated as well for you. And it's worth looking at the setting section above here, because depending on which Pi you're using, it will set the memory split differently. So this is the memory assigned to the GPU, or graphics side of things. It's saying here, if you've got 256 memory total in your Pi, which would be the A model, it will set half of it, 128 for the graphics. If you've got 512, which is the B and B+, it will set 256 for the graphics. And if you've got a gigabyte, which is the Raspberry Pi 2, then it will set 384 meg for the graphics. And you can change these and tweak these if you want to see different settings, but by default that's what it's got in there. And as you can see, by default you will get more assigned to your memory if you've got more memory to start with, like a Raspberry Pi 2. And I know a lot of people have tried a 384 memory split when you've got 512 total, so when you've got a B. And I think it works for some of them. Maybe others don't find it so good, but I'm just going to keep it stock. I'm just going to leave it like that for these tests. So you've got as much like for like sort of testing as I can get. I'm not over configuring these systems at all. Okay, so I'm going to quit out of that with Control X. And you don't need to do this, obviously, it's just that's where it is if you want to see where it is. Okay. Right, now I showed you earlier where are we? It's the command to update the system, sudo apt-get update, and you can do that if you've got a RetroPie system up and running. Separately, you can just get a brand new image. Now, as I speak at the moment, which is the Saturday the 7th of February 2015, there isn't an image up on the RetroPie site that's supporting the Raspberry Pi 2. The latest one they've got is 2.4.2, which works on the B&B Plus, but it wouldn't work on the Raspberry Pi 2 unless you put it in the original Raspberry Pis and run that update command. But there is a thread in the forums on pet.rock, which is where the RetroPie images are, and in that thread a user called Buzz has recompiled, I think from source recently, a lot of the binaries, and he's updated it specifically to make sure it works on the Raspberry Pi 2, and it will also work on the Raspberry Pi 1. And that image that he's got is pretty much going to be the next image released on the site, so you could get ahead of the game and use it now, but obviously it could well be worth waiting for that to be officially released on their site. But if you want to try something quickly and easily, you could just burn that image, and that's what I've done on this SD card. I'm using the same image on the B as I am on the Raspberry Pi 2 Model B, so it's like for like, it's exactly the same image. I'll put a link to it in the description, and you could download that if you don't want to wait for the site to officially release it. But it's recently been built, so it's pretty up to date in a lot of areas. And like I say, I'll put the link to that if you want to download that now. It's been, I think the next step with the release is going to be optimized, the binaries on there, perhaps a bit more tweaked to support the Raspberry Pi 2, take advantage of a few more areas of the Raspberry Pi 2, so you get more out of it. But just keep an eye on the website there, the blog.petrockblock.com, and you'll see the sort of latest and greatest. But again, this demo is just going to show you what's going on with not changing anything really, how to take advantage of the extra CPU that's there and the extra memory, just see what difference that makes. Okay, so you can either use your existing image, update it, or download a new image. The key bit really is to make sure that your kernel's current. I think any 3.18 might work, but the latest is obviously 3.18.5, so just update the command and you'll get that. Okay, so we've had a look at that. We've had a look at the overclocking and the memory split, where you can set that, where you can change it. And now I think it's pretty much just going to be looking at those games. So like I said, we're going to have a look at some SNES games and N64 games. I'm not going to look at PS1 because I haven't got any ROMs for that, and I mean, you could argue it's sort of pushing, is that one retro? I'm sure plenty of people would think it is, but I'm going to look at the N64 and SNES. And when I look at N64, I'm going to specifically use the Mupen 64 Plus as opposed to the one that's running in RetroArch. And all that means is, I'll show you whilst I'm here actually, if we change directory to go to the home directory, so change directory and then the tilde sign takes you to the home directory, which is /home/pi. Change into the RetroPie directory. Remember, it's case sensitive there. And here I'm going to change into the ROMs directory, and now I'm going to list them with ls. And you can see all the ROM. This is where you put the ROM files, obviously. And for N64, I'm not going to put them in the N64 directory, which RetroArch would run. I'm going to run it in N64-Mupen64 Plus, and that means that the Mupen 64 Plus emulator will run it itself outside of RetroArch. I haven't tried the RetroArch one, but I've read somewhere that the Mupen 64 Plus has got better performance, so I'm going to run that both on the B and the Raspberry Pi 2 Model B. So again, we've got like for like, but that's the one that I'm running. And because this build, this image, has recently been made, I think it's pretty current. I've noticed on the Moop and 64 Plus site that there's a couple of comments recently, this week almost, about some changes to the emulator, so I think it is definitely actively developed and it's probably the way to go if you want to do N64, but that's a separate topic. That's where I'm putting them, N64. And the SNES ones, well, there you can see you could put ROMs in SNES Pi SNES, SNES 9X RPI, or SNES. I'm picking them all in SNES, which puts it through RetroArch, which uses the Pocket SNES emulator. So that's what I'm running it against, but obviously you could use Pi SNES or SNES 9X to run it as well, so that's up to you. But again, I'm keeping it like for like. I'm going to put in both examples of the videos in SNES, so that's what I'm running it against. In N64 we're doing Mario Kart and Super Mario, and then on the SNES games we use a couple with the SFX chip, which is StarFox, obviously the classic one that uses that chip, and Super Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island. So we give those two a go, and I'll fire up Emulation Station now. Okay, here we are in Emulation Station. As you can see, it's pretty stock, pretty same as usual. Everything's as per the image, except I've got in N64 a couple of ROMs, Mario Kart 64 and Super Mario 64. This hasn't been changed at all. The only thing I've tweaked on the emulator is to make sure it can see my controller, which is an iBuffalo USB. Not the best for N64 games because the button mappings are a bit weird, but that's what I'm going to use. And over here we've got the SNES, because I put a couple of ROMs in here. We've got StarFox that I'll show and Super Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island, which both use the SFX chip, which can be a bit of a strain to emulate because that's the chip that came on the cartridge rather than the system. So they're the only two that we're going to run. You will notice in the N64 emulator, when I run it, the picture doesn't take the full screen because I've forced it to keep the 4:3 ratio, but I'm not quite sure how to centre that bit yet, so it looks slightly odd. And also what I'll do is make sure that my screen, because my screen's a 720p, just make sure that that sort of ratio shows okay, but you can kind of to a large degree ignore the size there. It's all about the performance, so we'll see how that looks. Now I'm not going to run the game straight here and then keep video capturing, because when the video mode changes it will drop out briefly and it just confuse the capture card, so I'm just going to go straight into the games, and you won't see this interface, but I'm just running it from Emulation Station just as you normally would. There's no difference there. Like I say, the only tweaks I've done on the N64 are to make sure it can see my controller and make sure the video mode isn't appearing. By default it'll do 640x480, so I'll have a small window in the centre of the screen, so I've brought that up a bit. That's the only thing I've changed. And the Super Nintendo runs in RetroArch, which can already see my controller, and I'm not going to change anything there. Okay, so let's load up one of the games. Right, here we are in StarFox. I'll just let this run for a moment. As you can see, that was pretty sluggish, not particularly good performance there at all. Both the systems, or well, certainly this RetroArch one, I'm not going to put any shaders on, so it's again as like for like as I'm going to do on both the systems. I am currently doing this on an original B. It's not the Raspberry Pi 2, so this is the original system, and with the settings I showed earlier. It's just running here, and I'll do a brief bit of gameplay so you can see how that works. Just hitting start. Okay, just press start again. To the game, start again, and we get a bit of an intro. Skip that. Now that garbled sound isn't someone trying to speak, it's just supposed to be radio chatter, so it isn't quite as bad as it sounds, but it's still pretty poor. Okay, there we go. Now, playing this as it stands, it feels like you're sort of fighting against it all the time. It's a bit like it's just moving in treacle. It's so slow. I mean, it's playable. You can use it. Well, you'd think you'd have more time to react when it's going so slow. I think I'm just bad at it, but you get the idea. It's not very swift here at all, and the sound's sort of quite jittery, stuttery. It's, you know, clearly nothing like playing it on a Super Nintendo. It's borderline unplayable. It just, you know, it works, but it's not much fun. And from that, I'm pretty sure you get the gist of where it's at. So I'm going to quit out of that, and we'll take a look at Super Mario World 2. Okay, Super Mario World 2. I've not tried this before, but as it stands, it seems okay. I mean, the music's playing, not too bad. Yeah, like I said, this is on a B, Raspberry Pi B model, and the overclocking is at high. Now, looking at that, I've never played the original. I don't know if that's normal or not. It looks a bit slow spinning around there, but let's see what the gameplay's like. I think I can hear some sound in the background. Actually, it's not particularly. It sounds a bit stuttery. Let's go in. New file. Bit of an intro. How to play the game. Hopefully I'll pick it up. There's only 4 buttons, can't be too difficult. Okay. Right. I mean, it's playable. I'm not having a big issue playing this. I mean, maybe a little bit sluggish as I'm going. Some more help, something about pressing. Oh, not that. I wouldn't say this is awful, it just feels a bit, not unresponsive, but it's not quite as fluid as you'd expect this to be. There we go. Right. Ooh. I've got no idea what's going on here, but the game seems not too bad. But I know I did have a friend pop around a while ago playing this. He's played it before, and he's saying it's noticeably slower than when he played it on the SNES originally. Okay, I've done something clearly bad here. The arrow's flashing and it's not happy. 2, 1. And I've died. Right, well hopefully those of you who know who that should play would see whether that's good or not. But I just did it as an example because it does use an SFX chip. Okay, try the stage again. No, we're trying the N64 games now, so we'll go to the Mario Kart one and see how that plays. Okay, firing up Mario 64 on the original Raspberry. Seems to load all right. Get that spinning logo to start with, and intro screen's not too bad. Flags waving all right, and now it's kicking into a bit of demo gameplay. Okay, you absolute major audio stuttering there. Graphics aren't really all that quick. You can see that would be pretty sluggish to play. The sound's never catching up with itself. Not a great experience. I know a lot of people want to play the N64 emulator on Raspberry Pi and get a lot of issues, and when they do get it working, the performance quite often isn't really there. See if it's anything like this. I mean, this isn't overclocked to turbo, but high is, you know, still quite an overclock. Let's see what the gameplay's like.
Welcome to Mario Kart.
That slide across the screen was pretty painful. That was quite stuttery.
Mario Grand Prix.
It's definitely struggling with this.
Let's go. Select map.
As I said earlier, with this Meeple 64 Plus, I have configured it slightly to keep the 4:3 ratio, but I haven't worked out how to centre that up, so you've got a bit of black space on the right hand side there. By default, this would open in 64480, so and it centres it a sort of small window in the middle of the screen, so I've just enlarged it by just having shimmered it to the right. Okay, it's pretty painful. It's not jumping graphically, but it's all pretty clearly slow and sluggish. The sound's consistently awful. You couldn't really play this for very long. It's playable, it works. Obviously the original Raspberry Pi can run an N64 emulator and the games in it, but it's not really playable on any sort of sensible level. Yeah, it's just really poor. I can see why a lot of people wouldn't want to progress with this, or often post and say, is there any way you can improve it? You know, maybe the emulator could be written a bit more differently to optimise it for Raspberry Pi, or I don't know. But as it stands, I mean, I know I don't configure N64 on my Pi setup because it's just, you know, a bit too much hassle and not really practical when you try and play something that runs like this. Okay, so I'll quit this, and what we'll do is run Mario 64 on the original Pi as well, and see how that goes. Okay, try it now. There we go, you can hear the sound struggling a bit in the background. Face graphic isn't too bad, it's a little bit slow maybe. Have to see what it runs like on original hardware, but that looks a bit slow to me. Let's see what the gameplay's like. Clearly the sound again is very poor.
Dear Mario, please come to the castle. I have baked a cake for you. Yours truly, Princess Toadstool. Peach.
I don't know how many of you currently run N64 emulator on the Raspberry Pi, but I know with the RetroPie setup you can do as I do and put it into the Meeple 64 Plus emulator, so it plays it straight from that, or it's got a libretro or RetroArch based version as well, but I think that's a bit slower. This seems to be great. I don't know if you can manage slower than this, it wouldn't be great at all. The graphics aren't too bad. but the sound, again, really poor. Okay, here we go, a bit of gameplay. There's quite a library of N64 games, so there's certainly a big fan base out there who'd like to get this working much better than it does at the moment. Maybe some of you have got different configs and you've tweaked some setting, maybe the video setting or sound setting. Maybe you've got it running better than this on a B+. Maybe you turbo overclock and it's vastly different, but from what I've seen and read, I think the experience most of you get will be similar to this. The emulator itself seems to run okay. It's not really a problem with that. It seems to kick in without a problem. And you get the gist, really. Again, it's another usable game, but it's ruined by consistent poor sound and generally sluggish. When I'm controlling this, it does respond fairly quickly to what I'm pressing, but it just feels very slow as I do anything. What we'll do now is put the Raspberry Pi 2 in. Everything will be the same. It'll be the same image, it'll be the same ROMs, it'll be the same configuration. The only difference will be the overclock will be for the Raspberry Pi 2 as opposed to the original. And obviously it's running on Raspberry Pi 2 hardware with the extra memory and faster processor with the quad core, obviously. And hopefully that'll make a difference with certainly the N64. Okay, we'll try that now. Okay, you should be able to see quite a difference already. That's a hell of a lot quicker intro. The sound's pretty consistent, and this is on a Raspberry Pi 2. I've not changed anything else other than the hardware there. Much quicker, so let's have a bit of gameplay here. Okay, that is a hell of a lot quicker. Everything's keeping up. The whole game is vastly faster. You can probably see if you try and line up the video where we were a minute ago. With how it's looking now, it's light and day, massively different. I'm still not any good at it though. But it's certainly much more playable than it was before. Get distracted there. Yeah, so it's just vastly improved with the extra, perhaps the extra memory helps a little bit, and certainly the CPU is really improving the game a lot. So I would definitely say you're going to see a difference if you get a Raspberry Pi 2 and play something like StarFox. Probably most of the games where you may have seen a bit of a speed issue before, it should certainly have improved things. You can see it quite clearly here. It's a lot different. If there are any games you want me to specifically test, just put in the comments and I'll do my best. But like I say, most of the games I've played, most of them are quite old Mega Drive and SNES ones, which run pretty well on an old Pi anyway, but I can see why some people might want to get in this if they're really into StarFox or something like that. Much better. Okay, so the next one we'll try is Super Mario Kart 2. Okay, pretty similar from what I remember at the moment. Not a lot of difference there. That's faster spinning, I can see that's already better. See what the gameplay's like. Intro again, don't think I can skip this. Again, bear in mind I'm not putting any shaders on this, so it probably looks a bit pixelated at the moment. Okay, see if I can tell any difference here. Oh yeah, okay, that's quite a lot different. I thought when I was playing at the original time it was working okay, but I can tell that this is a lot smoother already. Certainly the sound's not dropping out like it was before. That's much more playable experience. That's really quick. Well, it's probably normal speed, but yeah, I was used to that really slow speed a minute ago. There we go. Yeah, that's a lot better as well. So at the moment, I'd say it's definite improvement without doing any tweaking in terms of the configuration. Just using an up-to-date image, getting the hardware improved. Like I said earlier, it's quad-core. Even though the emulators may not take full advantage of that, they are getting benefit, and certainly a big improvement. So let's check N64 Mario Kart. Now here we are with N64 Mario Kart 64, and oddly it does seem slightly longer to start up. I don't know if that's because it's loading more in memory or what, but I'm sure the original B loads this bit quicker.
Welcome to Mario Kart.
Okay, not necessarily a massive difference shown so far. I think this is pretty much like for like. Kick into a bit of demo gameplay here. I think you can see already that is a massive difference over the B we tried, the standard B we tried a minute ago. It's like night and day. The sound's amazing, it's coming through fine. I think there was a minor stutter a minute ago, but nothing on the scale of what it was like. And you can see that the graphics also really shifting around there. That looks much more playable. Let's give it a bit of gameplay.
Welcome to Mario Kart.
The scrolling on the screen there is already much faster.
Select your play. Let's go. Select map.
Looks a lot more promising. There we go, that's so much better. That's easily playable. I mean, those of you who've really wanted a reason to try the N64 emulation on a Raspberry Pi, I'd say the extra power here is reason enough to give it a go now. There's about 300 odd games on the N64. That opens up a lot more options to everyone who wants to try this out. there's a lot of games that are going to benefit from the extra speed, and there's no extra config changes here. It's just as per exactly the same as that original B plus B image we tried earlier. It's the same image, same settings, difference being just the overclock, and obviously the hardware's different. And I think a lot of people would be pleased with the results here. It's much improved, and it's only going to get better if the emulator is more further optimised to take advantage of that quad-core processor on the new Pi. If anyone's not got a Pi yet, you certainly want to go for the Pi 2. There doesn't seem much reason to buy a B plus. But they're saying that obviously it does run thousands of games perfectly well. But if you want to get a bit more power out, you can run these N64s and the SNES ones with the SFX chip. Looks like this is the way to go. Okay, I'm going to fire up Mario 64, see how that looks.
Hello!
Okay, Mario 64. And whilst the sound was okay on this part, I think on the original Pi, those graphics look like they're moving faster to me now. I think it's already taken a bit of a step up there. Let's try a bit of gameplay.
Okie dokie.
Dear Mario, please come to the castle. I have baked a cake for you. Yours truly, Princess Toadstool. Peach.
Looking good so far. And the reason I'm showing the N64 and SNES games is really to emphasise where the difference might be on the new Pi and where the power is benefiting. Because if I tried this on some Mega Drive, Master System, SNES, NES, I probably wouldn't see any difference at all. So it's not necessarily more responsive, but it's really flowing a lot more smoothly. Again, the sound's not a problem though. That's quite happily running through. And it just feels a bit more, as you'd expect when you play a game really, the speed of the frame rate's much better. Much better playable game. If there's any particular games you want me to check out, whether it's on the N64 or SNES or whatever, drop a note in the comments and I'll do my best. But I'd say anyone who's looking to make a decision, can't really go wrong with this new hardware. It's making a big difference on N64, and you saw that StarFox example was pretty horrific with the original Pi, but great with the new one. If the video's been helpful, like always, please do hit the like button, that really helps out, and if you want more tips on RetroPie generally, please do subscribe. Thanks.